Hi folks, the Filipina P here, and it's been a while since I've been on a rant, but I just came across a story in the news that made my blood boil. I know most of you folks don't watch GMA News because the reports aren't in English, but they're a giant media outlet here in the Philippines, and yesterday I saw one of their videos that I just have to respond to. I don't have a problem with GMA's reporting. It was fair and covered all the different angles pretty well. It's the story itself and some people's comments regarding what happened that make it necessary for me to respond. Now, some people say I bash my own culture sometimes. So, sometimes it needs bashing, like all cultures do, to fix the things that are wrong. That's a good thing, and this is certainly a topic that needs urgent attention. Last week, it was reported that an 11-year-old Filipina gave birth, a child who didn't even know what was happening inside her own body. I dare you to watch this story without getting angry or crying or pulling your hair out, because if you're human, you're gonna do all three. First, let me tell you the story as it was reported before I give you my opinions and editorial. You'll probably have some of the same observations I'm gonna make, and although we might disagree on some of the finer points, I hope you'll agree with my general assessment. If not, there's always the comment section to let me know where you think I missed the mark. An 11-year-old named Bella noticed that her clothes were getting a little tight and her stomach was enlarging. Her classmates saw it too and wondered why she was walking funny. Bella also realized that something in her stomach was moving. She started getting headaches, stomach aches, tender breasts, and she began vomiting. Her parents noticed her problems too, and her father began to wonder if she was under attack by evil spirits or maybe a curse. So they decided that the best and most reasonable course of action was to take her to a tambalan, which is a witch doctor or a faith healer, someone without a medical degree. He examined her and decided that Bella had a tumor, so her mother purchased some pills. The report doesn't state what kind of pills, to treat the non-existent tumor. The pills only made her stomach worse, and all the while, there was a baby inside her being affected who knows how by unknown medication. Not knowing what else to do, her parents finally took her to a health clinic where they performed an ultrasound that instantly solved the mystery. Bella was 5 months pregnant. She couldn't believe it, and her parents couldn't believe it because Bella was always left at home after school while her parents had to work. But there's something that Bella didn't tell her parents about her activities with a 13-year-old boy, her cousin, who often came over to play, someone her parents were aware of. Maybe she was too embarrassed to mention what they've been doing, or maybe she didn't know what could happen as a result of what they've been doing. Maybe she didn't even know what sex was. Did her parents explain what had happened as she hit puberty, to her body, and to her instincts? The reporter doesn't ask those rather important questions, so we don't know. What we do know is that Bella and her cousin Julius had sex 4 times during their playdates, with a predictable outcome. After her pregnancy was discovered, the parents were swift to blame the boy. They said they felt betrayed by him and wish he could go to jail if he weren't so young. The father even says he felt like killing someone, but murder is a sin. For his part, the 13-year-old boy says he's embarrassed by what happened and that he and his friends had watched adult videos that made him curious. Next, we have the director of the Commission on Population and Development, who assures us that they're looking into the problem of exposure to social media and sites with explicit videos. Then a spokesperson from a non-government organization says that we should be braver and have more honest conversations when it comes to teenage pregnancy and access to emergency contraceptives. Meanwhile, just 1 week before her due date, Bella's stomach began to ache badly. She's taken to the ER where she's immediately admitted. Doctors determined that due to her small, undeveloped frame, a C-section may be necessary if she can't push the baby out of her little body. Ultimately, she wasn't physically mature enough to safely have the baby, and the doctors had to remove it surgically. As the baby is placed in her arms, she's asked, "Aren't you happy?" To which there is no response. Bella is now taking care of the baby while studying at home. She wants to be a doctor someday, and hopefully medical school will finally give her the education that might have changed the course of her life if she'd had access to it a year ago. Okay, I know I just injected my opinion there, which I said I wasn't going to do, but you know me, I couldn't keep my mouth shut forever, and I apologize for the slip-up. Anyway, Belle's back at home now and says she's mad at Julius and doesn't want to see him. Julius hasn't seen the baby and can't go there because Bella's family is angry with him, and he's ashamed, but he wishes the baby well. His parents promise to give some financial support for the child, but no specific amount is discussed. Finally, we have the behavioral specialist urging people to get sex education from their parents, not their friends. He also recommends discussing sex within the family. And either way you take that, I think it's a wise idea. Then the video ends with a donation link for the girl and her baby. So, what do we make of this? I have so much to say I could make a 5-part series about this story, but instead I'll focus on the herd of elephants in the room, right after we take a look at the way the public reacted to the story. Amazingly, Filipinos didn't seem to object to the one thing that might surprise a Westerner the most: the decision to take Bella to a witch doctor instead of directly to a licensed physician, as if that's just the normal thing to do here. My people, wake up and join the 21st century, or maybe just the 19th. Even that would be an improvement. How could no one realize her condition, or at least suspect it, even after her friends at school were talking about her swollen belly? The fact that this possibility didn't even occur to anyone, even to the faith healer, is unbelievable in this day and age. I did see a lot of comments blaming it on social media and pornography. I've done an entire video on the negative effects of social media, as well as its positive side. But no matter which way you come down on the subject, social media is here to stay, and so is pornography. Of course, we should take all the necessary steps to make it as difficult as possible to keep young kids away from porn and to limit their exposure to harmful social media, but that only addresses one part of the problem. We can possibly screen out every inappropriate image our kids are gonna see, especially these days, so they need to be taught how to evaluate what they come in contact with, what it is, and what it means. Focusing just on pornography is like focusing only on the drug dealer, without explaining to kids what drugs are and the dangers they represent. Keeping your kids in the dark on basic issues and treating them like infants all the way through childhood only guarantees that you're gonna be an infant as an adult, unprepared to face the world. You could get rid of every single porno and shut down every social media site, and you'd still have this problem. So it has to go deeper than that. Most of the negative comments, though, were directed at Julius, meaning that the thought processes of a 13-year-old boy was the topic we should be fixated on. I'm sorry to say, but we're not likely to make much progress on changing that either. Now, I can certainly understand Bella's parents being furious with the boy's role in all this, but there's plenty of blame to go around without piling it all on the head of a child. It's not only the fault of the boy. It's not only the fault of the girl. It's the fault of our society and the way we handle basic realities like sex. We demonize it and we refuse to even discuss it because we say we're shy or embarrassed. Well, let me ask you this. If your child was playing in a field of poisonous berries, would you be too shy or embarrassed to warn them about it? So what's the difference? The difference is because we're talking about sex. So why do Filipinos have such a hang-up about sex? I'll let Captain Obvious answer that one, if he ever makes a video. The fact is, it's our duty to discuss this stuff with our kids, just like it's our duty to make sure that they brush their teeth and keep themselves clean, to get an education and have all the access to the information they need to succeed. Shame on anyone that's so weak or fearful that they can't even warn their own children about the situations that they will face, and either let someone else be responsible for teaching them or just leave it up to chance. Not to be fair to Bella's parents, I have no idea what their situation was or how much information they'd already given her. But did you know that some Filipinos can't even say the word sex in front of their parents? There's often zero communication with parents about sex, and it was the same way in my house too. Kids are just supposed to figure it out without guidance and only talk to other kids about it. That's insane. We act like sex is taboo and refuse to discuss it. But then we turn right around and pressure young women to have babies. When are you gonna have kids? You need to have babies before you get much older. What are you waiting for? Have a baby! So we won't talk about how that happens, but we act all surprised when it does. What could be more confusing for a teenage, or in this case, a preteen, Filipina? And why are we so afraid to look at programs that actually work to reduce the problem? There are 500 babies born to teenagers every day here in the Philippines, but countries that provide comprehensive sex education have drastically lower incidence of teenage pregnancy. How do you explain that? Shouldn't we take a serious look at an approach that's proven to make a difference? And I'm sure there are other factors involved: socioeconomics, culture, religion. But there's no way to deny that education is effective. It doesn't even have to be the intrusive form that some parents object to. Just the bare basics. Saying don't insert tab A into slot B would be better information than a lot of kids actually get. While some schools here teach a watered-down form of sex education, complete with fallopian tubes and menstruation, they often leave out any mention of the act itself. It's like teaching someone how to grow corn without telling them you have to push a seed in the ground. And it's great that Bella's still studying, but what are they teaching her? Education should include more than 1 + 1 = 2. It needs to include the fact that sometimes 1 + 1 = 3. Teaching about sex does not mean endorsing sexual behavior. Just as teaching a child not to put his hand in an open flame doesn't mean you're encouraging third-degree burns. Just the opposite, in fact. I haven't even mentioned subjects like birth control or teaching critical thinking skills so that Filipinos know how to deal with problems. But if we can't agree to open a dialogue on the subject, then we've already lost. Even if you're against sex education in schools, even if you're against birth control, even if you believe abstinence is the answer, you still have to have a serious talk with your children. Because how can you expect someone to abstain from something they don't even know exists? And some of you might say, we already know this stuff, P, and we already taught our kids about sex. So why aren't you doing this video in Tagalog and directing it at Filipinos? Well, the fact is, I have very few local viewers and plenty of people here understand English anyway. So maybe this video will convince some of the locals that do watch my channel to go into the next room and have a serious talk with their kids. And I thought you guys might be interested in how we see the issues, since that gives you a window into the reality here. I know a lot of you have girlfriends with extended family, so maybe you can help me help them by sending this video to any Filipino you think can use it. Or maybe have this conversation with them yourselves. Anyway, that's my rant for the day, probably for the whole month. And Friday, I'll be back to my regular programming, and I'll bring you a classic P video. Till then, folks. If you think about it, I'm kind of like a doctor, with my finger on the pulse of the Philippines. I can help to vaccinate you against all the problems you may encounter when visiting here, with an injection of information and humor. If you appreciate my services, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell for your next dose of Dr. P. Consider becoming a patron, where you'll not only help to support my channel, but you'll receive exclusive videos and features. And while you're in the waiting room, you might want to check out this other material. It's much better than some outdated magazines. And I promise, this won't hurt a bit.